We're not getting, I don't think, always the true story of how it started. And I think if people knew really how a lot of these relationships start, I think like men, especially in today's dating market, could learn from that and, utilize that, or at least be realistic in their own dating lives.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today we're talking about a very well-known couple, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. They met in a very interesting way. Before we get started, please remember to like and comment on this video, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. So Todd, I was really surprised to hear that they met on Instagram. Apparently, Harry saw a video of Meghan on his feed, and it was a mutual friend that had posted the video. Mm-hmm. And then Harry reached out to this mutual friend, and that mutual friend reached out to Meghan, mm-hmm. and then basically told her that this guy was interested in her. Mm-hmm. Meghan asks, "Who is that?" And the mutual friend said, "Prince Has." Mm-hmm. And Meghan seemed to not know who that was, mm-hmm. which yes, Meghan's from America. We're not all that interested. Mm-hmm. Not all of us in the royal family in England, but still, I just question whether or not that was true, and if she really didn't know who he was. Mm-hmm. But anyway, she claimed that she did not Google him, that she just wanted to go to his Instagram feed mm-hmm. and see what he was all about through his Instagram feed.
Yes.
And she claims that that's what really drew her in, actually, was what she found on his Instagram. And mm-hmm. that was a lot of photos of Africa and interesting things that he was doing.
Yes. Yeah. And I have a hard time believing that that's the real story as well. Yeah. I think the first part is that, given watching the documentary and, reading a lot of clippets from his book, the mutual friend never comes out in the surface. Yeah, and I would think somebody who was that mutual friend would really want to take credit for that, because this is a big deal in that world.
I know. It's true. I watched the documentary, and she had so many of her friends come on that talked about their early relationship. Mm-hmm. And why wasn't this mutual friend present in the interview?
Exactly.
So I think that is an interesting question.
Yes. I believe he probably saw her on her show and was attracted to her and probably followed her on Instagram and then DM'd her. Mm-hmm. That's probably what the truth was.
I mean, he did seem like he was very much drawn to her and almost was sure from the beginning that she was the one. He did say in part of the interview that he had told one of his good friends, as soon as they had started dating, mm-hmm. which was only, I think, within that time that they had met, just within a weekend. Mm-hmm. He then went and told one of his good friends that, she was it. She was the one. Mm-hmm. So it tells me that, there was definitely a lot of interest on his part. Would that have built up over a weekend? I don't know. I think it's more likely, that mm-hmm. that had built up over time, that he had been aware of her before actually meeting her.
Yeah, exactly. And, I wish they would have just kind of came out and said what the truth was, because I think it sends a negative message.
Yeah, well, that's why we're breaking this example down, because mm-hmm. I think that we get this message a lot out there. And we've talked about the different pills and the fact that the blue pill is what many people believe, and that things just kind of happen when you least expect it, right? You're going to bump into that person. And I think a lot of the stories that we hear about great relationships out there, mm-hmm. like Prince Harry and Meghan, is that it just happened. It was meant to be. Mm-hmm. It was predetermined.
Yes.
They're soulmates. Mm-hmm. And we're not getting, I don't think, always the true story of how it started. And I think if people knew really how a lot of these relationships start, I think men, especially in today's dating market, could learn from that and, utilize that, or at least be realistic in their own dating lives. Mm-hmm. Right? Because if a guy that looks like Harry, but...
Yeah, we've got to talk about that real quick.
Right?
So there's a clear looks disparity in the couple. I think most people would agree with that. That, she is definitely a Stacey, and that was one of the things on the show is that, she was presented as this, beautiful attorney,
Yes.
type of deal. Like that was kind of her role. And, he's this, at best, kind of normie looking guy. And there was, in the documentary, they showed them an interview that Meghan had done a year prior to them meeting. And one of the questions was, which do you prefer, William or Harry? And she just said, I don't know. And to me, that is an indication that she wasn't attracted to either of them. So I think that this is a clear case of status maxing, that this guy had so much status that it didn't matter what he looked like. It didn't matter what his Instagram was, because that was the second thing I think we should talk about real quickly, is that she said in the documentary that she loved his Instagram because it had all these beautiful pictures of Africa and elephants and rhinos and blah, blah, blah. And to me, that, again, is kind of that blue pill messaging, because I really believe that if it was Prince Harry and he was out partying with his friends and he was with a bunch of different women, if she was into him because of his status, she would have then said, he looks like he's a really fun guy to hang out with.
Right.
And it looks like he's a ladies' man, and I'm going to be that person that's going to get him.
Yep. Like, so whatever photos he would put on there, it wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter.
Her message of why she was attracted to that would fit whatever pictures he had posted.
I believe that would be true.
Yeah, I think to a degree. I mean, I think the only exception would be that if he was like posting terrible party photos and he like was around a bunch of girls that were draped around him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think she still would, kind of say like, he seemed like a really fun guy that I wanted to get to know.
That's true. She could hide it in that message, but I feel like more likely she would ignore the whole Instagram thing. And then all of a sudden it would be, I didn't look at his Instagram page. I just wanted to meet him in person and really judge who he was.
Well, but the whole thing was that, this is where I don't think she was being honest, is she said that is what attracted her to him, was the fact that she did look at his Instagram page and she said, oh, that was great. And then he remarked like, phew.
He did.
Like that type of thing.
Yeah.
Where the reality is that as soon as she probably found out it was him, she didn't need to Google him. She didn't need to go to his Instagram page. He's one of the most famous people in the world.
Yeah. Most likely, though, I think she Googled him. Because I think every woman out there would. I mean, even somebody that they don't know if they'll be able to find any information on, they're going to Google that man's name.
Sure.
And especially somebody that's a public figure and that's out there. Because if the very least would be because she wants to make sure that he's not currently with anyone else, right?
Yes.
And that she's not, getting herself into a situation that's not going to look good for her.
Potentially. Or it could be the fact that, maybe if he was playing the field, because we don't know at that time. He's going to say whatever is going to look best. But let's say he was dating multiple women. Again, maybe she had that mindset of saying, okay, I'm going to lock him down.
Well,
because I have what it takes. And so in order for Harry to get someone like Meghan, he has to be monumentally have more status than her.
Yeah.
And he does.
I think so. Like, I do think going back to the three things that really attract women, which we've said is attraction, status, and money. Like, I think that you could probably have more of one than the other, depending on the woman and depending on like what she desires the most. And I think for some insight into Meghan, this is something else that I noticed in the documentary is that she went back to her like grade school and she wrote in one of the yearbooks to her principal, the last line was like, when I become rich and famous, I'm going to talk about you, Miss whatever her name was. So like, I think that gives you insight even as a young adult, like what is your driving force, right? And so that was probably Meghan's driving force even into like the career that she went into. And maybe it was sort of like the idea would be that she was going to create it herself. She was going to be a big time actress.
Yeah.
But then, and she was doing it she was doing a decent job at it.
Yeah.
With, the show that she was on.
Well, the fact that she even got on on a show is monumental, because that's like 1% of actors.
She's hugely talented to be able to do that.
Yes.
But then so that's like her main driver, right? Mm-hmm. And then she meets a man that could give her 10 times what she ever expected, 100 times of what she ever expected for herself to do.
Because nobody knew her name before they met.
No.
Unless you were a fan of that show.
Yeah. So with that being said, like if that was her driving force, and then combine that with Harry's driving force, may have been to find a very attractive woman.
Of course.
I think that maybe also, in addition to being like physically attracted to her, obviously, Harry has always been kind of like the reject in the royal family, right? He was the one that kind of was the bad boy, in trouble a lot. And so he hated the paparazzi because of what happened to his mom. And he didn't like what was going on. So to find somebody that came from sort of a different world and didn't have the same worries, especially regarding the paparazzi or desire to like know every detail about him and his family, I could see that being attractive. But then I could also see how, it's almost like another hit against his family to say, like, in addition to everything I've already done, which is all about being myself, is I'm going to marry this girl that does not fit the mold in our family. And that's because I like her as a person, who she is. And I wouldn't even doubt that, like, in his mind, he kind of saw it as a potential out down the road, right? Because if he had picked a woman that fit the mold, he's stuck. There's no exiting or doing what he wants in his life, because he picked somebody that was already outside of that mold. He wasn't going to be stuck anymore, potentially, if he chose that.
He did say, he was his mother's son.
Yeah.
And Diana was known for being rebellious to the family and, kind of all the customs and things of that nature. So, yeah, maybe you're correct. Maybe, that was in his mindset as far as saying, I want to pick someone that the family won't like but I like that.
Right.
Which, if that's the case, I give the guy credit.
And then, absolutely, I do too. And then, I mean,
because Kate's probably really stiff. Let's be honest. Do you know what I mean? Where
prim and proper for sure.
Yes,
she is
exactly. Which, if that fits with William, great.
Yeah,
and it probably does.
Yeah,
but I don't think that type would fit with Harry, given his background.
So I just think that like Harry knew what the reaction was going to be. He just wasn't going to make that change his decision. He was going to pick the type of person that he wanted to be with. And so I think that was going to be his type, whether it was Meghan or not. That was the type that he was going to go for. But then he probably like expected that reaction, but then it reinforced his opinion of his family to get that reaction.
In the first episode even, he says that she completely dropped her life to be in mine, but then I completely dropped mine to be in hers. So ultimately,
he did drop his.
He had to drop his. But it's just kind of interesting, kind of how is that part of the power dynamic?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does he then say, okay, versus some way trying to kind of work that out within the family?
Yeah, I can see that.
The irony is that when I look at this situation, I don't see anything fundamentally, unethical or wrong about it. What I don't like is the messaging that comes along with it. Yeah. I just wish, people were honest and said, you know what, I saw this woman on this show and she was a great actor and she was beautiful and it was something that she was totally my type. And I found her on Instagram and I DM'd her and I knew that I had a shot because of the fact that I'm a prince.
Right.
And if she would have said, a prince DM'd me, of course I'm going to take a look into this, because it's something that every girl aspires to marrying a prince.
Right.
It's part of Disney's culture, right?
It's romanticized, right? And even like Hollywood will push that message. But you'll always see in those movies that it's the girl that like doesn't even know who the prince is. And when they meet, like they have no idea what they really are.
Exactly.
And then they fall in love.
Yes.
And then they find out who they really are.
Yes.
And so then it's like just more amazing that they just fell for each other for who they are. So I understand like how people like that storyline.
Yes.
But is it reality? And what do you think that does, for everyone else kind of watching that story, thinking that that's reality?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that I think that what they try to do is fit that storybook to it as best they could. So it was romanticized versus being honest about kind of what was going on, because people don't want to hear the truth. We don't know the truth. But I guess my big messaging for this is just when you watch documentaries like that, just to kind of go into it with kind of more open and maybe cynical eyes, because it's something that I think, again, there's just so much blue pill messaging, and I just think it can be harmful for a lot of people out there.
I think so too. I mean, I think that it was very forward of them to even admit that they met on Instagram. Like, I think that a lot of people hide that. I think even just normal people out in the world that meet on Instagram, social media, or even dating apps, they will still hide the fact that they met that way because they're trying to romanticize their own story.
Yes.
And be able to tell a good story.
You're right. They could have just said, we met through a mutual friend.
Yeah. But all that does, she could have.
Yeah.
You're right. And so all that does is it sends a message.
But think about it, though, Emily. If she would have done that, then we would have had to find out who that mutual friend was.
Oh, you're right. And there might not be one.
There might not be one. Exactly.
Yeah, you make a good point. I could see that. People are looking at these stories and they're trying to figure out their own dating life.
Yes.
And probably trying to pull something from it in what they could do, or what should be the case for them, or how should it happen. And, we're trying to give really the more realistic approach and give real things that, guys can do to, change their chances in the dating world and to help improve them. So,
absolutely.
If you guys enjoyed this episode, please remember to hit the subscribe button and watch the next video.